Tonight's episode of Board Chitless is sponsored by The Game Steward. The Game Steward is an online game store offering Kickstarter board games out of print and imported games at reasonable prices. It's time to play.
Hello there, and welcome back to another edition of Board Chitless. I'm Leki, and today I'm joined by
Tristan.
And this week we've been playing Warfighter.
Warfighter, the Special Forces card game.
This week we'll also be talking about Tristan's time at Airecon. Yay! So Tristan, you're at Airecon this weekend, or last weekend. You and Francesca rocked up to promote 1066 Tears to Many Mothers and Gloom of Kilforth and Lifeform. How did it go?
Yeah, it was really good actually. Aircon's like a small, well, it's not actually small anymore. It started out 3 years ago. Apparently, the guy who ran it, Mark, had 25 people round to his house and had a board gaming session. The next year, he did an event in Harrogate and 500 people turned up. And then this year, it's like well over 1,000.
Yeah.
So it's really grown, and it's sort of in tandem with, you know, the growth of board games as we've seen it sort of thing over the past few years. So it's a cool event. But it's all about the gamers. You know, there's a trade hall space in the middle, and then there's two gaming halls that are just as big again.
Yeah.
And everyone was really lovely. Everyone was really friendly. We had our little stand there with, you know, roller banners supporting the games you mentioned, and a surprising number of people that came over to the stand. Everyone was really positive and friendly and everything, but most of them were actually existing backers of one or more of our games. So it was a really good opportunity to sort of meet people face to face.
Yeah.
Some of them were actually familiar faces that we've met before at like UK Games Expo or last year at Airecon and stuff like that. Some of them were people we met for the first time who were backers who would had, you know, dialogue with over the internet or on the Kickstarter comments or whatever. And then some people were just people who had backed us that we'd just never spoken to before. So there was a really good mix of like gamers, and we obviously had people who come to the stand who didn't know anything about the games.
Yeah.
So we did do a little bit of pitching, which you might remember from UK Games Expo last year.
Yeah, pitching till I'm hoarse.
That's it. So I was a bit husky by the end of it. But yeah, and that was interesting as well, because last year we were completely focused on Gloom of Kilforth and just getting the word out. Whereas now it was like, so this is Gloom of Kilforth, and if you like this is 1066 Tears to Many Mothers, a very different game.
Yeah.
And if you like this is Lifeform. It was a completely different game again. So it was like triple the pitching in half the time sort of thing.
That's great though. In like just 12 months, you've got like two very different games to Gloom of Kilforth added to the roster. There's quite a lot of variety now in the Whole or Nothing Productions line. Yeah,
it's like a library of games now. It's dead exciting. And obviously we got, you know, a couple more coming up this year. So it's going to get even crazier. I don't know how we're going to alter the pitch for that. It'll just have to be like, which one do you like the look of?
Yeah. What sort of gamer are you? Brilliant. Absolutely fantastic. So it's a good indicator then for what to expect from
UK Games Expo?
UK, that's the one. That's what I was fumbling for.
I think so. It's like a sort of a miniature version of it. Like if 1,000 and odd, and I don't want to underplay the numbers here. It might have been over 2,000. I don't know off the top of my head, but it was so it was like a sort of medium level event at UK Games Expo. You're talking about tens of thousands of people. So scale that up and amplify it by people who've come from all over. And well, I mean, you know, last year it's bonkers, and it's getting bigger every time. So it is like a small sort of a prep for UK Games Expo. And to be honest, I had actually forgotten how sort of mental it is.
Yeah,
it can be really draining. So after sort of 8 or 9 hours of just constantly telling people about stuff, which obviously I love to do, talking about games and everything.
Yeah, but
it does take it out of you. And when you sort of crash down in the evening and go for a beer in a game and meet some people, which is what we did actually. That was cool. We met a lot of Board Game Geek guys from the One Player Guild and stuff. So we went over to sit down, have a drink, and play a game with them. And you know, it was like I felt the shutters coming down. It was like, hey, maybe you need to go to bed at 7 o'clock, sort of thing. But you know, powered through and had a really good time with it. It was really Harrogate's a lovely place to visit.
Yeah.
The people were really nice. Got to play some new games and stuff. So it was, just busting weekend.
Brilliant. And so we've got live forms to look forward to later on. The Kickstarter campaign coming later in the year.
Later in the month, hopefully. It's going to be out in a couple of weeks. That's the plan.
I'll watch this space then. And more importantly, watch Kickstarter space. So like I mentioned earlier, this week we've been playing Warfighter, a card-based strategy fighty game from Dan Verssen Games. So each player just takes on a different soldier from a squad. You can choose from different nationalities and then take on different operations.
Yeah, the different nationalities come with the expansions.
Okay.
So it's fundamentally an American-focused game, I think, the actual base game. We've got all the expansions here for the Warfighter Special Forces card game, which is the version we're playing.
Cool.
There is a World War II version, which we didn't play, which I look forward to acquiring one day. So this is set in the modern day. You play as Special Forces like Navy SEALs or SAS or Spetsnaz or whatever. We've got the Russian, American and UK forces.
Yeah.
And the actual images of the characters in the game are based on real soldiers. That a lot of them are people, backers, who've sent in their own photos of themselves in combat zones or in the military outfits and stuff. So you've got this interesting combo of actual photos of real life soldiers and then computer generated images of the insurgents and drug cartels and Eastern European bad guys that they're fighting against.
Yeah, to be honest, I didn't really notice too much, but I don't know if it's me profiling, but I wasn't spending too much time looking at the images on the insurgent cards as much as I was looking at the images on our cards that were coming out. It was very much like, quickly check the stats, see how quickly they can kill us, and then what we can do about it.
How many reticules are over their faces that we have to shoot off?
Yeah, that is it. They just become shapes, and that's when you know that the enemy's around there, which is maybe an accurate depiction of modern day war, maybe not. But as a game, I think this is absolutely fantastic. There's a lot to take in at first, like with, any games with decks the size of your fist. But there's not too many moving parts for you to keep on top of. So in terms of attacks, you've got your character card laid out in front of you. It'll tell you how much movement you've got, how much health you've got, your loadouts, how much stuff you can carry, and then your weapons will just say, this is what you need to hit somebody and this is what you need to kill them. And then the enemy cards will say how much cover they've got, so what you need to do to break through that. And then from then on, it's just a question of doing a bit of quick maths here and there and just seeing if you've got a grenade available to take out the room, really.
Take tonight's game, for example. I know the rules.
Yeah.
There was maybe a few minutes of setup. I skipped through one element of the game, which is the loadout, which is, once you've played it a few times, it becomes a big part of it, is going through which soldiers you want, what kit you want to outfit them with, what skills you're going to give them, what weapons and everything else. And that's based on the resource points that you get for the mission. So the smaller the resource point, the quicker the mission. And then you have like the deep sort of behind enemy lines missions that can go long, where you have hundreds of points to sort of spend on outfitting a whole sort of team. So we played, we started out in the jungle, which is the training missions, where you're up against the drug cartels. Quite easy missions to begin with, although I was getting pretty close. I rattled through the setup and gave you a pretty high-powered soldier with a machine gun and grenade launcher.
The big guns.
Yeah, and I brought in a support dude with a shotgun who could do like the up-close stuff just to sort of get us going. But from that point, giving you the hand of cards, we were away. There was no like, so this is how the game plays. There was no explanation or anything.
Yeah.
You've played enough games to know like roughly how these things go. And it was a case of you can play this card, you can do this action, and off we went. And there was almost zero sort of explanation, wasn't there, to sort of get going.
It was really easy to follow. The game only becomes taxing really once you've got a couple of location cards down and they're all filled with people. And then it's just kind of like working out who's attacking who at what time, and in what way everyone's going to interact with each other. Occasionally you'll get a support card, or like so you have about 5 cards in your hand which represent your health as well. And they'll just give you really nice buffs, so you can attack for free or you can move for free.
Yeah, they don't so much represent your health. Your health dictates how many cards you can hold.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, so you can still get injured outside of your cards.
Yes.
Basically.
The injuries will bring your hand size down, which then just causes all sorts of complications later in the game. And the game text on the cards is quite large and really simple. And so some of it almost a little too concise. So it's like add 1 to ranged attacks, no XP. So it's like add 1 to ranged attack rolls and then don't take any XP for using that card.
Yeah.
So sometimes you have to just like raise an eyebrow and wonder in what context does this work? But then once you work out why, then that's it. You're done. Then you don't have to check the rulebook ever again. I thought it was a very elegant game.
Yeah, the basics are really simple. You're moving through a set of locations and you're trying to control the number of bad guys coming out. Because every time you play a location, you're going to spawn a bunch of insurgents or drug runners or whoever you're up against. And it's about how you control them and what weapons you use against them and stuff. And there's so much variety in the setup and layout of the soldiers. I'm a massive fan of this. I'm hooked on it as a solo player. I'd play it multiplayer more often if we had the opportunity. We've not really played it on like a big multiplayer game. But basically you have to play those deep, long missions that we were talking about, that I mentioned earlier, to have enough points to go around for everybody to play as a player soldier.
Yeah.
Because you bring like NPCs along who don't have a hand of cards and just sort of do what you tell them. They're like support characters. So you can have like a sniper. In our third mission there, we had a sniper following us around who was, taking pot shots at the bad guys. So if you don't have enough points to go around and one of you gets lumbered with one of those guys, then it's a bit gubbins. But as long as you've all got a player soldier and you get to draw cards and play cards, then that's how you get the full experience of the game for each player. But you can only do that in the bigger missions, which means the game time is a lot longer. So obviously as a solo player, that doesn't matter at all.
Yeah.
For 2 players, I thought it was fine. We started out on the lowest level missions there. We had enough to give us both a soldier with a decent weapon. And then what I love about it is if you play a campaign, we played a really short campaign.
Yeah.
You can skill up your guys if you survive, and the skills are amazing. You can add you can make each other marksmen. We discovered one tonight. What is it? Zeroed. So you have to save up 9 campaign points to pay for this, but you get add 1 to your attack and defeat cover rolls, which I would love to see in action. We only unlocked it in the final mission there, but that's mega, because you're rolling d6s to hit the cover. Yep. So when you're shooting at a bad guy, you roll a d6 to hit the cover, and then if you hit them, you roll a d10 and try and get over your target roll, depending on the weapon you're using, to try and kill them. And if you fail either of those, if you fail both of those rolls, it's a miss. If you succeed at one of those rolls, you've suppressed them, so you stop them from attacking. And if you roll successfully on both the rolls, you take them out. And that's really satisfying. Like trying to get your card play to boost your rolls or to fire grenades at a big cluster of guys. Removing the hostiles as you go along is hugely satisfying. And I love the sort of narrative that it tells.
Yeah. There were some big air punch moments, really, weren't they? When we got the right cards came out at the right time, and we went from a position of being pinned down into a corner, getting hammered, to getting a support helicopter out at the right time, reloading and quickly just fighting back very quickly and sneaking away. And it all felt amazing. We did the mission. I would say it was like a mid-range mission, wasn't it? It was about 14 turns, 13 turns. And we had to find and take over the enemy HQ and hold it. Yeah. And we were fighting all the way through like people's homes, shopping malls, into a citadel. And then we finally made it to the enemy HQ. And it turned out there was like a radio man in there on his own, calling out targets to his mates. And it just felt really thematic. That's where that particular character would be. And it was hell to get to him in the first place, surrounded by snipers and everything. Yeah. And you took a wound at the last minute. It's super cinematic. Yeah. I really love the story that it tells. And on the surface of it, sort of instant kill cards that you can get that come out, but they feel so well integrated. Yeah. So if you manage to draw the sniper card for our team and get him into play, you might only take out like a low cost or low value hostile target. Yeah. But it just takes the load off. He's automatically going to do it. You don't have to roll yourself for your gun like you do in every turn. And then we get like those big cards like the mortar assault. So when you're like 5 locations deep, you've run out of actions, or you're low on resources and ammo and everything, but then all of a sudden you're able to call in a mortar attack and just take out like a hostile that's really been bothering you, like an armed mob. Yeah. And you can just wipe it out in one go. It feels brilliant. And like we had a Kiowa chopper. Yep. So we had this helicopter support attack that we could bring in to take out a really difficult hostile, and we did. But then later on in the game,
We found the hidden cache of stuff. So it was like a radio that we could phone them back in again and call them in for another attack. I love that stuff. It really just, it keeps like, it keeps the pace going. It always makes you feel like there's hope.
Yeah.
We were totally running out of time at one point, so we were definitely going to lose the mission. We had a couple of turns left and we were too far away from the objective. But in that same hidden cache, we found the radio for the chopper and we found a GPS that cut the time down, and it literally brought us back into the game.
It gave us like 2 turns extra, didn't it? And just saved us.
Yeah, and we absolutely needed both those turns. We finished on the very last turn, and I love that you're never really out of it. You know, I mean, you can be. If all you guys get taken out, you know, you're toasted and that's the end of the mission. But as long as you can sort of stay on top of the hostiles and keep moving, you know, really importantly, keep moving and keep your location secure from reinforcements and everything, it just feels like you're deep behind enemy lines, you're up against the overwhelming odds, but you've got the professionalism and the skill set and the tools to sort of like even those odds out. And
That's it.
You know, when you're putting down however many hostile cards are coming out, like armies of them, it doesn't feel massively realistic, but it really recreates sort of that behind enemy lines, overwhelming odds, men on a mission.
Yeah.
Like my favourite movies like Lone Survivor, Bravo 20, all of those sort of like trapped behind enemy lines missions.
Yeah, well, the play of the location cards really plays up to that, because you've got, there's a tracker at the bottom of the board where you slot in your locations and you're working towards the objective location, but all the gaps in between those are empty. And when you draw, so discard draw action, you draw some cards out, so there'll be action cards, but the location cards have markers mixed in. So you draw a location marker, you draw a location, and that could be a shopping mall. So you can play it for free, it's easy to get into, but it's going to slow you guys down as like you start looting in the shop, so you're checking all the different stalls to make sure there's no enemies there. Whereas there could be a private home, which is a bit harder to get into, but it's going to not cost you as much time to go into. So straight away, as the leader of this squad, you're making a decision. Are we going to waste a bit more time going through this easier path, or are we going to try and gun our way through something that's a bit more difficult? And you're constantly making those decisions. And at one point, I think we had about 5 location cards out on the table, picking and choosing which ones we wanted to ransack, and then destroyed the rest of them and got some additional actions out again. So it was just amazing how that would play out. But then occasionally we'd have about 3 turns with no locations. So when you finally get one, it's like, well, I don't care what it costs. We're putting it in. We need to keep moving.
We need to get to that objective.
Exactly.
Yeah. And we had the marketplace one as well. Like some of them are really thematically integrated, like the marketplace you can't fire into from outside.
Yeah.
You have to be in the market.
It could be full of civilians.
It could be civilians.
Yeah.
So then you have to switch your weapons down from automatic to semi-automatic so that you're choosing your targets. You can't just like go wild and fire grenades and stuff. And so then you have to really plan around that. And that was the big hold up for us. We found this marketplace full of hostiles, and we had the choice of going in and being overwhelmed by them or pulling back. And so it feels really counterproductive, but we all pulled back and they had to come out of the market to come to us. So then all of a sudden we can start bombing them with the grenades and everything so that we're not hurting the civilians to try and take them out and then rush back through it again. So it really does add this element of, can you really afford to move back, or would you just rush in and take them on a hand-to-hand combat sort of thing? Every turn you're faced with interesting decisions, cool bad guys, and some of the bad guy cards as well. I mean, they all have their own unique abilities, but you get like the radio man, like you mentioned, that drains our resources, and leaders that inspire them, the bad guys. So if you suppress them, they come out of suppression.
Yeah.
You get snipers that are just going to absolutely butcher you unless you take them out, and they're hidden by the other characters and stuff.
They're absolutely awful, and they'd also stop you from gaining
entering.
Yeah.
So they're in that building, but every time you try to go near, they're just shooting at you.
Yeah, there's nothing you can do.
Then there's the armed mobs, which are just like, they just keep coming. There's tons of them. They're not particularly hard to kill individually, but there's just so many of them.
Yeah.
It chews up all your turns, and then God forbid the vehicles come out, like technicals and stuff.
Yeah.
But then you also get events like IEDs and refugees that you have to sort of bypass, and all these other cool things that, again, just provide this thematic sort of story of your special forces behind enemy lines trying to overcome these crazily overwhelming objectives.
Yeah. The only playing the game, the only real criticism I would have would be that the dice rolling would make it seem almost like a bit too luck-based.
Yeah.
And during the earlier missions, it certainly felt that way. But it was only later on, once we played the longer campaign, that you started to appreciate that the amount of cards that come out that'll let you alter the dice results. So your dice target will be knocked down by 2 by playing a certain support card. And if you've got some XP to throw on it, they'll bring it down by another 2, which means this impossible enemy to attack all of a sudden becomes really easy as long as you can put enough firepower behind it.
Yeah.
And those sorts of cards are coming out so often that it doesn't actually feel like it is very like luck based.
You're playing the odds, aren't you?
You really are.
And again, you get great cards in the deck, sort of the few and far between, but stuff like double tap. So if you're in the same location as an enemy, like a sniper or a leader or someone who's really bothering you, and you get a double tap card, it's just like 2 in the heart, 1 in the head or whatever, and that's it. They're toast, they're taken out. You don't have to roll. So again, it's another sort of great feeling from a player agency point of view, where you can just take that guy out, and then you can spend your other attacks on just shooting at the thugs or drug runners or whoever else is in the way.
Or prepared fire came out so many times.
So useful.
And it's basically like, you can hit him, but
so you defeat the cover roll.
You defeat the cover roll,
but then you still have to roll.
You have to roll to kill it. That's it. And so that's it. That's half the job done for you.
Yeah.
And it made such a difference when it came to some of those enemies. It's absolutely, especially when you're using the grenades.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just absolutely fantastic.
And the two of us in the first couple of missions going through with our weapons, I had a shotgun, then I upgraded it to a carbine like yours with grenades. And then in the third mission, we brought the sniper along with us.
Yep.
And he was able to sort of, the further back we left him, the more effective he became. So then he was providing support fire as well. And it was just, I absolutely love this game, in case it's not obvious enough.
Yeah. But then Alan the sniper was another thing to manage, because we had to try and keep him back so he'd be more effective. But then we can't protect him when
you
he's
have
in
to
a
keep
situation.
your eye on him.
So you have to make sure that he's in a location where there's no reinforcements coming out and no one's trying to target him and go for him. Yeah. There was a lot to think about, but it never felt like a brain burner. It didn't. I never felt like I've got so many decisions, or this decision's so complicated that I'm just going to give up on it and hope that fate takes over.
Unlike some other games that we've played.
Yeah, totally. So there's just so much fun to be had, and like you're saying, like loading out all the specialists and what gear you're going to bring in, and just trying to work out what the mission might be about and what extras you're going to throw on there. It was an awful lot of fun, and they even doing the mini hidden cache locations just to say, right, quickly, do we need this GPS? Do we need the helicopter?
Yeah.
We ended up getting more ammo. That saved us.
We were burning through ammo, and reloading constantly.
My machine gun just jammed every available.
You were on full auto for every single attack though.
Yeah.
So again, it's something else you can manage. You can shoot like semi-automatic, and you only get 1 dice roll, and so it's harder to hit. Or you can go full auto, make sure you take them down. You roll 3 dice, you bound.
Yeah.
Well, you're more likely to hit, but if you roll low, you're more likely to jam, right? Or run out of ammunition. So that's something that you constantly want to fire on full auto because you know you're going to hit. But like we were doing, we were just burning through ammo until that hidden cache saved us again.
That was it. Yeah. Oh, incredible. Yeah. I'm definitely gonna come back to this game.
Cool.
Yeah, if we get more opportunity to play it, and like you're saying, really, it'll be really interesting to see if like Dave or Sam or Jackie would want to sit down and play it as well as like a foursome.
Yeah.
How much extra gameplay we can get out of it, and if we can just get everyone in the campaign straight away, or
I think
how that would work.
One of the huge selling points for me in terms of replayability is the scenarios. So the jungle one is really easy. So we played a couple of jungle missions tonight.
Yeah.
Then we went up into the Middle East against the insurgents. So that's like steps up in difficulty a notch. And then we've got 2 more theatres. So we've got the Middle East again, but it's against the army, which is all tanks and professional soldiers and stuff. So again, the difficulty ratchets up. And you have to then really start thinking. You can't just bring canteens along and like we were doing, just sort of bringing along whatever we liked. You have to really plan out carefully what weapons you're going to use depending on the objectives and everything. And then on top of that, there's the Eastern European expansion where you're fighting against helicopters and tanks and everything. And then the Nazi Zombies expansion has just arrived, so I'm not sure how that fits in. It might only really work with the World War II Warfighter, which I don't have. But Dan Verssen said, no, there's nothing wrong with your Special Forces guys going up against Nazi Zombies, so I went in for it. So it'd be interesting to give that a try as well.
Nice. Like a proper Wolfenstein time loop.
Yeah. And there's a whole bunch of missions for each of those theatres as well, and you can mix them up. Yeah. So you pick your resource value from about 10 different cards, and then there's 10 different missions. And even if you replay the same mission, because of the way that everything's going to come out, you're going to get a different experience each time. You're still probably going to be fighting the same lot of bad guys. And I think we did go through the entire hostile deck in last game.
Yeah, we saw them all. But it was there was enough in there to keep it interesting. It felt like there was a bit more armor in it than the jungle deck.
Yeah.
Though it was less trucks, more IEDs and like vehicle bombs and stuff.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see how that'll step up again, fighting the army. Probably too much. But yeah, it's just such a lovely game. And it's difficult to find a game where it's super easy to learn. I know I had a massive advantage with you've played so much of it that it was super efficient for you to like tell me how to play the game, and you knew what rules to omit for the first game and then what's to bring in afterwards.
Yeah.
But I still think if you came to this fresh, it wouldn't take too long to get your head around the rule book.
The rule book has been criticised, but all rule books are. And I think it's pretty clear. I sometimes have to refer back to it because there are a few special abilities on the cards that I'm not 100% familiar with, but a lot of them are self-explanatory. And the actual gameplay itself, once you've played it through once, you've got it. Yeah.
Well, that's it. It's the time between learning to fun. It's very short.
Yeah.
On this game.
I'd say as long as someone knows the rules, the barrier to entry is super low. And I too would be interested to see what it'd be like with a group with 4 or 5 of us. How did you feel? One of the things that comes up when people talk about this game is the sort of ethical side of it, like recreating conflicts that are too close to reality. So some people complain that it's, I don't know, maybe it's too close to the bone. I think it's sort of the conflicts are unspecific. So you're not, I mean, they're obviously influenced by recent events, and you could name certain wars and things that they play off.
Yeah.
But I think it's distant enough and detached enough that it's sort of a fabricated fantasy version.
Yes.
But did you feel uncomfortable at all? Did you feel like you were like taking advantage or
not really, no. There was
not ethically dubious in any way.
There was two cards that came out and I thought maybe like and that would be the suicide bomber card and the IED team.
Yeah.
And it just, I don't know if it's because it's very sensitive sort of time for like cultural issues and race issues, especially when it comes to conflict. Those particular themes just being quite maybe like a bit of a touchy point where it's like, I'm not sure if this could be construed as being offensive or not. I'm not sure how I should be reacting to that. But as a gamer coming into it, I didn't feel like it was kind of like taking advantage of any sort of situations like modern history.
Yeah.
We started off with the jungle scenarios.
The drug runners, yeah.
Exactly. So that was very much like you're down in Colombia, border patrol, we're looking for like drug dealers and looking for cocaine labs, and we're going to try and shut them down. And with that sort of being very remote to us, because it's like in the 70s and 80s when that happened. So not in my like living memory of seeing it on the news. Occasionally something might flash up.
I think as well the anonymity of the computer generated bad guys probably helps a little bit. Like
definitely.
I always think of this game and Labyrinth, the War on Terror, as sort of thematically connected. Like the Labyrinth game is sort of a zoomed out overview of the struggle. Yeah. And then this, if you imagine like one card played in Labyrinth could then zoom into this game, and like if you play a Special Forces card in Labyrinth, this could be that mission sort of thing. Yeah. But because Labyrinth specifically cites dates, times, people, and events that have happened or are happening, I think maybe that veers closer to the bone than this does. And this feels much more like a fantastical sort of almost ridiculously overwhelming odds sort of situation.
It's caricatured, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's very...
and they've even discussed doing Warfighter Fantasy, so where you take like barbarians through different locations and fight goblins and stuff.
And so
you
easily
can see
done.
it reskin into that.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but I do think the mechanics as they are now serve this theme much better.
It's absolutely
like the shooting for suppression and grenades and all that kind of stuff.
It's absolutely spot on. You can tell that the designers are a fan of the whole, like basically gung ho. Here's a mission. You need to find a way to complete it, and it works as a puzzle. So you're constantly searching for those cards that are going to help you skew the stats or move through locations a bit quicker than you might normally would. And that all works towards you trying to achieve your end goal. I'm coming from a very skewed point of view where I absolutely love war movies. I
was raised on them.
Yeah, exactly. Like in terms of guns, I am not a huge gun advocate. I don't want to join the army. I do not want to fight. But there is something about war movies that kind of gets you going a little bit. You know?
It's extreme. No, it's like horror movies. You know, it's that extreme sort of experience that's so far away from our own lives. You know, and this does indulge that, I think.
Yeah,
the sort of adrenaline rush of, you know, what it might be like, sort of thing.
Definitely. But from that point of view, it's definitely a game for simulation, like basically like war and fighting simulation fans. If you enjoy some like any other war games, so like you're saying, like if you enjoyed Labyrinth, you'd probably really enjoy this. It's a very like simple game in comparison to it.
Yeah, I think Labyrinth is probably a bit more strategic, and this more like tactical sort of, probably more fun, maybe, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, I really enjoy Labyrinth, but
it's a lot quicker,
lighter, maybe.
I mean, you're playing cards, you're burning through turns, and before you know it, you've played a few scenarios,
and you're in it together because it's fully cooperative.
Exactly. Whereas if you're more of a like, I don't know, probably a bad example, but someone that enjoyed a dungeon crawler probably enjoy this. They might not necessarily enjoy it.
It's a similar principle, isn't it? Going through clearing locations and killing bad guys, sort of thing.
Exactly.
I think one of the biggest selling points for me, like years back, I was trying to design a Men on a Mission game.
Yeah.
And it was like men behind enemy lines, and it was absolutely inspired by reading books, you know, about SAS adventures and all that kind of stuff. And I got quite far with it. It had a working title, like character stats and everything. And then I found out about this. And the reason that I ever want to make games is because they don't exist. The games I want to play that I've not seen. And the more I looked into it, I was like, I think this might satisfy what I was trying to do. And then I backed on Kickstarter, it arrived, and I was blown away. I was like, okay, I can literally stop work on my game. Once I set this up, I generally leave it on the table for days, if not weeks, and just batter through an entire campaign. Because there's a campaign mode as well. You know, you're linking these missions together. You can lose guys along the way, but you can skill them up between missions. And it does feel a little bit tacked on. There's some weird things where you sort of, to make the next mission harder, you roll a die to see what happens.
Right, okay.
And it's like -1 to this, or, you know, you can carry one less thing. But it's also, again, quite simple, and it dovetails with the simplistic gameplay. And I don't mean simplistic in a negative way, just easy to pick up.
I'd say it's probably kind of to say frictionless, really. You know,
nice, like that, frictionless.
So it's straightforward, but it moves at pace. And if you lose that pace, then you know you're pretty much not going to complete your objective.
You can wipe out early on.
Yeah, definitely.
And then you know there's no coming back from it, I suppose. But it doesn't put me off at all. This is one of a bunch of games, like through the ages, that I could just play forever.
It's one of those games, really, where if the theme of it is something that wouldn't grab you, you're probably not going to be able to force yourself into it unless something massively appeals to you. I think you have to come into it from the point of view of knowing, like, it's a strategy game based on a war simulation, and if that's something that kind of makes your toes curl a little bit, then just move on. Like, find another game. If you're into a Euro or worker placement, then just go and there'll be better games to play. But if you
everyone likes different things,
exactly. But if you do enjoy a good old war scenario, then this is going to really scratch the itch.
Yeah. One last thing I forgot to mention as well that's in the, I think it comes with the Kickstarter Footlocker box thing, is the scenario book. So if you're not the kind of person that wants to spend ages poring through your soldiers, which I don't necessarily think you have to do once you understand the game, you can sort of quickly set up a loadout.
Yeah.
But there is a scenario book which has a whole bunch of missions, and it tells you exactly which soldier to pick, which kit to have, which mission to play.
Brilliant.
And it sort of gives you mini missions that you can go on.
Yeah.
Some of them are linked together. They all have like a little thematic introduction. And I've been working my way through this booklet. I think there's over 20 missions in here, and they're all really good, really well thought out. Particularly the one on the last page that's written by a guest designer.
I see.
We'll probably big that up a little bit.
Bravo 2 Zero's Good Hunt by Tristan Hall. Never heard of him.
They didn't pay me for that or anything.
Brilliant. Well, we'll give this one a go next time around.
But no, I mean, like, that aside, it's a cool way to just jump into it if you want a quick setup.
Definitely.
It tells you exactly what you want to play.
And then imagine once you've burnt through a few of these scenarios, you'd have a much better idea of how a lot of the equipment works together.
Yeah.
And then we'll probably want to start kitting out your guys immediately yourself. Really.
I've played it over 50 times, but going through that scenario book, I picked up new methods that I never thought of. Like some of them say a stealth setup where you've got all you guys that like have stealth attacks and knives and things. One of them is a night mission where you have to have night goggles and you're going up against guys that you have to identify as you're coming across them in the middle of the night. So it really, each mission sort of changes up how you approach it and reminds you about cards that you might not normally pick. So it's quite a clever sort of intro.
Nice. Well, that's it. Just stick on clear and present danger. get your William Dafoe on and get involved. We did mention once or twice that we're playing with most of the expansions.
Yeah.
So what does come in the base game if it's available, if someone's to get that online? What could they expect to find inside the box? Do you remember?
So it's everything up to the Middle East army. So you still get the jungle missions, you get the insurgent deck, you get the army decks. You don't get as many missions or action cards or anything else. There's a stealth expansion which allows you to do like snipers and sneak attacks and everything. Cool. There's a support expansion which gives you cards that help you move your squad more quickly and give you stuff like the speedballs that we had and the mortar attacks and things like that. The European Adversaries deck is a separate expansion which I strongly recommend because, like I said, the theatres I think are where the replayability's at. But if you like it, it's one of those where you'll go all in and get the lot, and that's where it really shines when you've just got the huge variety. I guess you could skip like the Russian or British expansions if you don't have a particular affiliation with those. I obviously had to get the British one, and I just went and got the Russian one anyway because I occasionally like to play as the Spetsnaz.
Fair enough. I'd imagine though, like you're saying, once you've kind of put in for one part of the game, the rest of it's surely going to follow. If not straight away, like you're just going to want to expand on all the content that's in there.
Yeah.
Well, thanks very much for joining us this week, and we'll be back next week for more adventures in board gaming. So thanks very much. Goodbye.
Goodbye.